Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody. This is your host Ahmed Hamer from the BNB Chain Gaming team. I'm accompanied today by Mark from Meta One Network, and today is the third Game Jam session. Mark will be taking us through Meta One Network and the tools that they developed. Welcome on board, Mark.
Thanks very much. Great to be here. Yeah, very
My
excited
pleasure.
to share a little bit more.
I'll give you the floor right now. Please go ahead, and we'll see if we get questions at the end of the workshop.
Sounds good. All right, let me share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you can all see this. My name is Mark. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders here at Meta One Network. Really kind of excited to be sharing more about what we do with the BNB Chain community, the developers that are in the BNB Chain Game Jam Awards, and really anyone that's kind of tuning in to watch these presentations at a later date. So essentially jumping right in, M1 is a decentralized real-time rendering network. Now, what that really means is that we're a cloud gaming solution on the blockchain powered by mining networks. Now, I know that that's a little bit of a mouthful, but I'll kind of walk you through what that means and what that what differences there are between what we do and maybe what you're more familiar with within the Web 2 space. So essentially, our vision, our mission at Meta One is to break what we call the visualization bottleneck. Now, I'm sure everyone's very familiar with the fact that as new games are released, there are players that don't have the hardware necessary to enjoy those titles, right? The latest games require generally the latest gaming PCs, the latest consoles, or even if it's a next generation mobile game, you need to have a pretty late generation phone to be able to play it. What this essentially means is that the vast majority of gaming content that we're seeing delivered out there is really only catering to a very small number of gamers. Those gamers that do already have the investment in the hardware necessary to play those titles. So at M1, we're here to break this visualization bottleneck, essentially break that hardware barrier that's restricting the vast majority of gamers, these 3 billion gamers out there that don't have access to high-end PCs or high-end phones, and giving them access to the quality and incredible content that is being developed in the gaming space. Now, I know this is probably not where you thought I might begin for a slightly more product-focused pitch, but there's a story here that I think helps people understand a little bit more about why we do what we do and what we're actually kind of building. Now, I'm not going to go really into too much detail as to the specific experience of myself and the team, but I will just say that we've been working together for this core team for almost 5 years now, and we've built some of the largest kind of cloud gaming networks in the world, including Tencent Cloud Gaming over in China. Now, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we were constantly, during the development, the building process with these cloud gaming companies, coming to face 3 challenges that we really couldn't figure out a solution for. These were kind of really fundamental challenges to the actual infrastructure and the way it was being built itself that are kind of maybe the villains of this story that I'm about to share. What we realized was that Web 2 can't solve for cloud gaming. There are, unfortunately, a series of fundamental issues that mean that essentially there is always going to be what we call these impossible hurdles. That is issues associated with cost, access, and speed. Arguably the most important considerations when building a cloud gaming infrastructure project. Now, I'm going to dig a little bit deeply into these. It's not as complicated as it might appear at first glance, so stick with me. But we'll start kind of up at the top here on the left in the Web 2 cloud gaming space. So this is your Google Stadias, your GeForce Nows, your Amazon Lunas. Now, those of you that are aware, you'll note that Google Stadia shut down a few months ago. The primary reason being these three factors and their inability to solve for them. I'll start first with cost. Now, Web 2 cloud gaming ecosystems are incredibly high capex and incredibly high operationally expensive as well. What I essentially mean by that is, and we'll use an example to explain. Let's take Google Stadia, and let's say that they're expanding into Japan for the first time. Now, to do this expansion, to prepare for it, they need to purchase upfront all of the hardware necessary to service the users that they intend to serve in Japan, right? So that's a massive upfront cost of hardware. Anywhere from 5 to 10, if not 20, 30 mil in investment costs, simply just to be ready to serve the users in Japan. On top of that, once they actually get the hardware into the region, they need to stand up a data center. There is operational and maintenance costs. And a rule of thumb within the cloud gaming sector is that essentially of your operational cost, 50% of that is bandwidth cost. So there is not only this massive upfront cost associated with establishing their business in a new region, but there's a massive ongoing cost as well. Now, that alone, obviously, is a huge barrier to innovation and a number of other factors, but it permeates into the next hurdle, which is access. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, the greatest really value that you can extract from cloud gaming comes when you can deploy it in regions where they don't have access to incredible hardware. They don't have the latest GPUs or the latest smartphones. That's where cloud gaming really shines. And obviously, these are kind of lower socioeconomic regions. They're areas where they don't have the expendable income to put that money towards, gaming hardware. Now, unfortunately, in Web 2, these large incumbent business models and this high capex, high opex nature of their business means that they need to pass on a cost somewhere. The user needs to help carry the burden of the business model cost. And that is usually seen in the form of a subscription. So you'll see Google Stadia, GeForce Now, these all have maybe a $20 to $30 subscription. That unfortunately means their ability to expand into lower socioeconomic regions, the places that cloud gaming would be most valuable, is restricted, right? Because unfortunately, in the Philippines, it doesn't matter whether you have a $20 or $30 monthly subscription or a $1,000 graphics card. They're both equally as unavailable. And then you finally jump into speed and performance, two kind of key metrics that are very important to people when we discuss cloud gaming. Now, when you have a centralized business model like these Google Stadias and GeForce Nows, you generally expand into a region kind of using a singular centralized geographic node. So taking the Japan example from before, they'll stand up their data center in Tokyo. The hardware will go inside that data center. And if you happen to be living close by to this regional node, your service will be great. Your speed and performance will be perfect. You'll have a wonderful experience. But if you happen to maybe live on the other side of the city, or maybe even in a separate city in Kyoto or Osaka, your performance will be poor. And as a result of the way that these businesses move into new regions, it's highly unlikely that you're going to receive a node to improve your performance anytime soon. Now, that's kind of a bit of a summary of the Web 2 ecosystem. And I'm sure you're starting to kind of connect a few dots as to why cloud gaming is interesting in Web 3. So I'll take you down to the bottom half of this slide, and we'll look at kind of where M1 lives, right? So we've built essentially a fully efficient, low CapEx and low OpEx business model. And we've done that by removing the requirement for us to own or operate or maintain any of the hardware within our network. So similar to Bitcoin, for example, right? No overarching corporation owns all of the hardware that's mining within the Bitcoin network. They are owned and operated by the node operators themselves. all of the upkeep, the maintenance, the electricity and bandwidth costs, that's all handled by the node operators. So essentially, we have been able to deliver this GPU resource through the provision of a decentralized hardware network in such a way that the ecosystem cost is incredibly low, unachievably low when compared to Web 2 centralized services. But what that really means is that we're regionally unrestricted. Essentially, we can deploy our service in any region worldwide. We're deploying in Southeast Asia now, in Latin America. We've got kind of our eyes on India within the next maybe 6 to 9 months, and Africa hopefully within the next 12 to 18. But we are now able to extract the true value of cloud gaming within the regions where people really do have the least access to gaming hardware. Now, that's kind of pretty interesting, but the really kind of fascinating piece is these last 2 points: speed and performance, and cost of the network. Now, as you can imagine, being a decentralized kind of distributed GPU node network, we don't have just one singular node within any region. We have a number of nodes, right? And as a result, the likelihood that an individual is living closer to a node than for example, in Web 2 is higher. The average distance between a node and an individual within the ecosystem is lower, meaning that immediately our performance and delivery of service are better than what we see in Web 2. But additionally, as we gain in popularity, as our node network expands, as we continue to onboard nodes within our ecosystem, our speed and performance will continue to improve over time. Essentially, without really any sort of ceiling. But the most kind of interesting feature is this final point here, which is that actually the cost decreases as our speed increases. Now, this is obviously kind of an odd one. People always ask, they'll say, so you're telling me that as your network grows, as your capacity increases, and as your speed and performance increase across your network, you're telling us that it gets cheaper? And yes, that's kind of what we're saying. Essentially, as you get closer, as the distance between a node and an individual drops, the bandwidth cost to deliver service to that user also decreases. So essentially, as our network expands in size, the average distance to a user is going to be decreasing. And as a result, that massive cost to the node operators within our ecosystem, which is bandwidth, will be continually decreasing as well, alongside, obviously, performance increases. So it's an incredibly kind of elegant solution. I think that hopefully, whether you're a kind of a gamer or a game developer, you've kind of been able to conceptualize some of this and understand why maybe the Web 2 version of cloud gaming, the one that we've kind of had in our mind for the last, say, 5 years, is maybe, hopefully, a little bit of a thing of the past. Certainly, if you're a speculator, if you're someone that's interested in this sort of technology, I think that whether you believe M1 is going to take over this sector or not, we certainly have the first mover advantage. But this is an industry and this is a sector that I believe makes incredible amount of sense from a Web 2 infrastructure standpoint being pulled into Web 3. Arguably some of the most sense of any use case that I've heard. But kind of bringing things back to a more granular level, maybe something that you watching this stream can kind of appreciate personally. I'll take a look at kind of the industry as it looks now for game developers. We'll start on the right-hand side with the centralized infrastructure. Now, here you'll see the centralized developer mode. Now, this is probably where the majority of the participants in the BNB Chain Game Jam live. This is your average game studio. You're building a title, let's just say on PC for now. You're, spending a lot of time and a lot of energy to, deliver the best game that you possibly can. Unfortunately, an amount of time you're having to spend on adapting your game for multiple screen sizes, right? Potentially adapting for multiple OSs. There's a series of these complex adaptations that you're constantly having to address to ensure to ensure that you're not losing any more of this already segmented market that you've positioned yourself in, where people that have the hardware necessary to play your game live, right? On top of that, you've got these hard to distribute installation packages. Essentially, you're having to repurpose your game and make it available for a mobile. Maybe it's the App Store, maybe it's a Google Play Store. If it's PC, maybe it's to get it ready for Steam. Maybe it's to get it ready for the Epic Games Store, right? All of this, again, is time spent ensuring that you don't shrink your already pigeonholed player base any further. And then finally, on top of that, the cost of the hardware is always passed on to the user, right? It is the user's responsibility and burden to hold and own that hardware necessary to play your game. And if they don't, unfortunately, that excludes them. Below, you'll see the centralized cloud mode. I'll try and speed up here so that we can get through it. That's centralized cloud mode. This is where Google Stadia, GeForce Now, Amazon Luna, this is where these guys live. We spoke about it just before. They're high CapEx, high OpEx businesses. They have slow response rates as a result of their centralized singular regional nodes. They're not built for Web3, so they can't actually service games that have any blockchain interoperability. And the cost of the access is passed on to the user again, usually through a subscription fee. And jumping to the left, this is where kind of M1 lives in this decentralized Web3 space. What we've been able to build, obviously, is a result of not owning and operating all of the hardware associated with delivering GPU resources within our network, is we've been able to have essentially an ecosystem rendering cost low enough that we can provide a free to access service for users. So user access to our network is free. There's no subscription cost. We can deploy in any region worldwide. No installation necessary for any of the games. So there's no storage requirement of the devices that you're playing from. Every game becomes instant play on any device in any system. Obviously, we're fully Web3 integrated, and we're also a truly open ecosystem. By that, I mean that essentially, unlike onboarding into Steam or Epic Games Store, where there's a large amount of red tape, we're actually a self-onboard system. So fully open ecosystem. Game developers, if they want to upload their game to our nodes, they can. And it's actually a self-onboard process that usually takes, just maybe 40 minutes to an hour. Now, this is where we start to get into some kind of pretty cool case studies with M1. And I'll start maybe by just having a look at this game in front of us. This is Undead Blocks, right? You would have noticed if you follow them on Twitter that they're expanding into a mobile release within the next maybe month. Now, what's interesting about this use case, and this is kind of something that I'm hoping to highlight as a result of being able to deliver a cloud gaming service at scale, is that when developers and game company executives, when they look at cloud gaming, usually they look at it and they think, okay, all right, if we're a PC game and we put our game up onto the cloud, right? What that means is we have access to more PC gamers, right? We open up everyone that's got a lower end PC, and now they can play too. And that's absolutely right. That is definitely a massive benefit of putting your game up onto a cloud and making it accessible via, say, our cloud gaming network. But what I really want to point out, which is incredibly cool, is that actually it also makes your game instantly mobile ready. Right. So really, there is this kind of rethinking to the roadmap that needs to occur, where all of a sudden this massive upfront investment in standing up an iOS team, standing up for example, an Android engineering team, getting ready to start building that mobile version of the game that may take anywhere from 6 to 12 or 18 months, right, is now something that's actually literally available within a matter of weeks, let alone the cost saving associated with avoiding standing up such a large team and spending such a large amount of time to prepare for your mobile version release. Now, that obviously immediately is a very cool concept, being able to kind of pull these development cycles forward and avoid all of this cost, especially within kind of this volatile mobile market that we seem to be in at the moment, where Apex Legends being pulled Battlefield Mobile being pulled. I can't remember whether it actually got to release or not. But either way, these large game studios are, removing their mobile titles from the mobile gaming space for whatever reason. But again, as smaller, more independent studios, that cost of mobile deployment is probably weighing even more heavy on your studios. So being able to remove that cost burden and bring that development forward is something that we're really happy to be able to offer. One final consideration while we're just talking about mobile versions is that maybe when you're looking at, say, Under Blocks here, for example, you're thinking, okay, this is like a mobile first-person shooter, right? It's maybe a little bit different to my game. My game's like an MMO, for example, or it's a game with maybe generally more keys that are required for access, right? The game is a more complicated experience, for example. Well, what I'll say to that is that we've worked with a number of games that would fall traditionally into this category, games that you maybe wouldn't expect to be instantly accessible via mobile device. But what we found in a number of these cases is that whilst these games have no intention of releasing a mobile version at any point in the near future, what they are doing, whether it's in-house or whether it's a result of their community, they're mapping their keys to PlayStation 5 controllers or to an Xbox controller, right? Because a lot of players, even though they like to play on PC, right, still like to enjoy playing with a console-based controller. Now, what's interesting with M1 is that we're actually able to map to any device that can connect to your mobile phone via Bluetooth or USB. So essentially, even if you don't think that your game would be well represented with a mobile UI actually on the screen itself, if your game is playable with a controller, then we can make a mobile-ready version of it essentially instantly. This Under Blocks case study was pretty interesting. When we had our first call with the executive team over at Under Blocks, I had our engineers actually download the demo version of Under Blocks from their website. It was publicly available to test. And we installed it on our cloud and actually played the mobile version on my phone in front of their CEO in our first call. So as I said, it's a very, very simple process for us to pull your game not only up into the cloud, but also into a mobile format. We actually have an automatic key mapping process that solves 80 to 85% of your key interactions, right? It's got your movements, your interactions, your shoot, your look downside, pretty much all of your standard controls that would give you, most of the interaction that you'd require on a mobile phone is automatically done. So essentially, you throw your game up on the node, and you'll be 85% of the way with a mobile UI instantly. So very, very cool. More of a point to rethink maybe some of the development pipelines. To look at this as a new technology field that is potentially able to change a lot about how you plan to develop games moving forward. Now, this is probably the question that we get the most, and is probably one of the ones that we spend the most time trying to overcome. And that is kind of, what is the performance like for a user? People are they're okay with recognizing that cloud gaming is a thing, right? And that it can deliver a pretty cool quality of service. But there is this assumption that the user, if they want an ideal level of performance, that they have to have some insane internet connection, right? That they need to be like plugged into some backbone in the center of a CBD, and that's the only way that they get 60 frames per second on their, or 120 frames per second on their game. Now that's totally not the case, and I'll kind of talk you through an analogy that I think helps explain better why that's so. Now, M1 is essentially a really powerful computer up in the cloud, right? So you deliver us your game, let's say it's Elden Ring, right? We install that game up onto this powerful computer up in the cloud. And we don't actually stream that game to you. That's kind of not what happens. What actually happens is we have like a camera that's taking a video of that computer playing that game. And we actually stream the video feed to you. So what you're actually seeing on your device as you're receiving a cloud gaming service is actually what we call an adaptive video feed, right? It's not the actual game itself. All of that kind of processing power, all of that kind of computational work that's happening on this high-end device in the cloud, it's not being carried via bandwidth to your device. Your device is simply seeing a video feed, the same video feed that it would when it was experiencing YouTube, right? Now, what this essentially means is that you're getting a video feed to your device, and every time you press a button on your keyboard or press a button on your controller or your phone, it's just instantly transmitting that to this gaming computer, and the button's being pressed there, and then the action is being sent and rendered back to you in real time. So I find that this is a much better way to conceptualize the delivery of service for cloud gaming. It's not some insane, massive bandwidth heavy process. It's actually just an adaptive video feed in the same way that you get with YouTube. And just like YouTube doesn't care about what size your screen is or what device you're accessing from, neither do we. It's that simple. So yeah, essentially, if you're out there and you can play YouTube videos, then you're going to be just fine. Now, I will just take a second to note that obviously, if you're watching YouTube at 2K or 4K resolution, that's going to put a pretty hefty burden on the majority of average sort of Wi-Fi or let alone telco data networks, right? So it's important to note actually what users M1 are serving, right? And how that kind of falls into the category of gamers and what their access is to, say, this technology and this bandwidth. And I'll just start by saying all of these high-end gamers, right, that live at the pointy end of the gaming ecosystem, that have spent anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 on a PC, that have insane internet connections, and that want to be gaming at 2K and 4K resolutions, right? These are not cloud gaming customers, right? They have already made their choice with how they want to experience games. And, I'm one of them too. I have a gaming PC, right? I love that experience. And I don't encourage anyone that's willing to invest in that sort of technology to kind of to move away from it, right? This is a very valid and enduring part of the gaming ecosystem. But cloud gaming doesn't exist to serve them. We start a little bit back from them, right? Maybe we're serving that customer that cannot ever really afford the latest generation GPU. They're always maybe a year or two behind the latest release. They're always maybe playing games that are a year or two behind the latest release, right? That's where cloud gaming starts. And we work back from there. We work down through everyone that, wouldn't even consider their PC being gaming ready, through to people that don't even have a PC at all, that really just game through their mobile device. That kind of 3 billion plus gamers is who cloud gaming serves. So yes, it is possible to stream YouTube at 2K and 4K. And yes, it's possible to game it at 2K and 4K resolution as well. But that's really not who we serve. Those people have, already invested in their hardware and good on them. So I guess wrapping everything up, what we do is we offer kind of more players at a lower cost, right? We give developers, we give users access. We kind of unlock new players, new regions, new markets, and also new opportunities. And this is kind of the fundamental point, right? We really want developers, and I hope that as a result of this presentation, maybe some of you are doing it, but we want you to rethink your roadmap, rethink some of the decisions, and where cloud gaming might be able to provide a solution, or at least Web3 enabled cloud gaming. And I'll give you an example of maybe a use case that might not come to mind immediately, and that might be your marketing, your marketing department, your marketing budget, right? So let's say you're building a PC game Unreal Engine 5 PC game. Immediately, by choosing that engine, by choosing to develop in the Unreal 5 environment, you are saying to yourself, okay, we are delivering games to players that have invested heavily in dedicated GPUs, right? We know what they look like. We know how many there are, right? That's our market. Unfortunately, you've immediately positioned yourself alongside Activision, EA, Epic, Lightspeed Ventures, right? All of these massive, extremely deep pocket game companies are marketing to the exact same people. As a marketing department, your customer acquisition cost when competing in this sector is incredibly high, right? It's a very, very expensive place to exist, and you're existing against people that essentially have, unlimited money, right? So cloud gaming has a pretty interesting use case for you in this instance. We can say, hey, you can keep marketing to this original sector, but how about we dedicate some funds to maybe some users that are just on the cusp of being able to access your game, but maybe just aren't really there. Forget about users in the Philippines, forget about users in India. Like, let's not get that crazy, right? Let's just say, okay, let's widen this technical, let's widen this tech gate just a little bit. Maybe, again, like I said, to those users that are maybe just a generation behind or 2 generations behind. Maybe, you're advertising to World of Warcraft players and Counter-Strike players, right? I mean, I love Counter-Strike, right? But it's not that graphics intensive, but it has an incredibly dedicated gaming community. And all of a sudden, by moving yourself, by positioning yourself just adjacent to that space that you were living before, you're now competing with within a segment of the audience that is not being competed in with these larger gaming incumbents, right? So your customer acquisition cost will drop, your runway will get you that little bit longer. But there's a lot of different ways that the kind of cloud gaming adds value, that it kind of can sneak into your business that maybe you didn't originally see. So hopefully I've been able to share a little bit more with you about what we do, and hopefully it's helping you kind of rethink maybe how we might be able to fit in and provide value to your ecosystem, to your games. Please, we're kind of the experts at finding ways to help you and finding ways to help kind of tweak your roadmap based on the services that we know we can provide. So if any of this has piqued your interest, if this is something that you'd like to explore, feel free, hit me up. My email's on the screen there. My Twitter and Telegram are there as well. And we'd love to connect. We've got all the time in the world to help walk you through this process. So please feel free to reach out. Ahmed, thank you very much.
Hi, Mark. Thank you very much for that. That was quite extensive, and we really appreciate all the information that you've provided. I'm very glad how you put it at the end as well and explain to everybody that if you want to develop an Unreal Engine 5, you're going to be competing for a very slim slice of the market against giants. I don't believe we have any questions today. So on behalf of myself, I've been your host, Ahmed Tahimar from the BNB Chain Gaming team. Thank you very much, Mark. And game on, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.